Good evening and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. Tonight, as usual, we're soliciting questions and comments from you via Twitter at Mason Roundtable and or on the Facebook page for this event and or with the hashtag TMR episode 27. That's TMR episode 27. Let's do a quick round of introductions. As usual, I'm your host, John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957. And I'll hand it off to Brother Jason Richards.
Thanks, John. As John just mentioned, my name is Brother Jason Richards, and I am the Senior Deacon of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Juan.
Good evening, brothers. Juan Sepulveda from Eola Lodge number 207 in Orlando, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast.
Great. Thanks, Juan. Brother Nick.
I'm Nick Johnson. I'm a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 67 in Big Time Farmington. And I got some blog.
Alrighty. Thanks. Brother Robert.
Brother Robert Johnson from Waukegan Lodge number 78 in Waukegan, Illinois, the senior warden there.
And will you do us the honor of introducing our special guest?
Absolutely. So tonight we're joined with Brother Michael Shirley, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Shirley, from the Grand Lodge of Illinois. He's the chairman of Leadership Development, which ties in nice and neat for our show tonight. So, welcome, Brother Mike.
Thank you, brethren. Good to be here.
All right. Excellent. Thanks for joining us tonight. As usual, we'll step into a quick round of Masonic news. The first thing I wanted to cover is that Jason has turned me onto this game that's been on Steam for a little bit, and it's called the GOAT Simulator, is that correct?
Yes, it's just called Goat Simulator.
It's
like the number one game on Steam.
Oh yeah, let's see what we got here. So I've been reading that on Joystick, it's already made like 1 million sales already. I don't know how much it costs. It's like $10 or something. So it's $10 million. Okay. Tell me what this game is. It's just you're a goat. You run around as a goat.
You're a goat. You run around. You eat grass. You headbutt people. You make things explode. It's amazing. You get a rocket pack on your back and you fly into crowds of people.
This is Masonic because...
Yeah. Well, and that's the running joke, right? This is...
Right.
That Masons love their goats. We could have a whole show about that. It might be a different topic. This is going somewhere really bad. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Way to set the tone for the episode.
Yeah.
I had such high hopes for him.
But I thought some Mason out there would probably like that. In fact, the other news there is that it's also coming to Android. So if you have an Android phone, it's official. You can now be a goat anywhere you wish to be.
I don't think there are any Masonic lodges in the actual simulator. That would be awesome.
That would be
Wait for the mods.
It's like the Office Space when it's like, the guy who invented the pet rock, he made like $1 million.
Okay. Any other conversations? Has anybody played the game? Anyone thoughts on Goat Simulator?
No, but my 14-year-old will probably want it.
Hey.
He probably already has it.
So apparently it's really big on YouTube. I mean, there's like people showing how they blow things up. I don't know. Go check it out.
Oh,
I had the pleasure of introducing a neighboring district deputy grandmaster to the wonder that was Goat Simulator.
Oh, I thought you were introducing him as the Goat Simulator.
No.
Okay.
No.
Old goat.
Yes.
Let's work on our prepositions.
In other news here, another thing I wanted to share is that so I found this kind of interesting. I read occasionally Harvard Business Review, and we're big on Masonic handshakes. Well, apparently a strong handshake is almost twice as effective as transferring E. coli compared to another one. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here.
Compared to a weak one.
Compared to a weak one. So, and so they're actually recommending high fives and fist bumps.
Really?
So,
So when I meet you guys in person, like when I do the thing where I walk up to you and I'm just like, "What's up, dudes?" Right in, do it right in my handshake. That's not cool, I guess.
not cool. Another thing to think about, though, is so without revealing any secrets, I wonder if the Masonic secret handshake is any better at transferring less bacteria than a nice firm grip.
I think so.
There you go. See, I tried to make it Masonic, guys. I'm really trying.
I'm so gonna bring some like hand sanitizer now to lodge every single time. It's like, all right, hold on, we got this thing right here. Use it, please.
I love the brothers, dude, but literally every time I get back in the car, man, it's
Yeah, there's some nasty guys out there.
hey.
I'm gonna start fist bumping all of our DDGMs. Be like, hey, bro, I know you're 90, but come on, man.
Figure out a way to do it so that it's Masonic. Like maybe there's a Masonic
Fist
hidden fist
bump?
bump.
Yes.
Ooh.
All right, enough fun stuff. Let's
All
get to the meat and potatoes of tonight's topic, which is the essentials.
Or we could
oh
talk
wait,
about.
I'm sorry. Jeez.
Or we could talk about actual like Masonic related news. And I know we've talked about this a couple of shows previous, but remember the Masonic Restoration Foundation Symposium is happening this week, 15th through the 17th of August in Cincinnati. So check it out if you're in the area. It'll be a good time.
Sweet. And
Okay, now we can get.
Now we can have fun now that TO lodges are here. Robert,
what?
you were saying something?
No, I interrupted Jason. I said, who's going to be at the Masonic Restoration Foundation?
Jason?
There will be a lot of people at the at the MRF symposium. Chris Hodap is going to be there, as well as Robert Hurd, Andrew Hammer, Oscar Elaine. So they've got a lot of really great symposium topics, and it's going to be a really, really fun time. Cost of registration is $100. You need to register. You can't just show up. So go ahead and check out the Masonic Restoration Foundation website, and I'll post that in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. No, that's great. I know we've been hyping it for a while, so it's good to make sure that everyone knows that that's coming up. With that, leadership. We've talked in episode 13 about mentoring and what it takes to be a good mentor, and anyone can be a mentor, right? But this episode is really targeted towards those that are kind of going to have the essential lodge leadership, the officer type positions, and you just can't stick someone in the chair and hope for the best, especially when it's often a 5-year commitment when you travel up through the line. And so, really, here we are here to talk about what are those things that are necessary to make sure that they're prepared for as they travel towards the east. So I'm going to open it up, and actually I'll let our special guest lead us off with some thoughts and points that he has prepared well in advance. So,
yeah, considering that Robert told me I was walking the dog this afternoon, said, "You want to be on a podcast?" The first thing is you need to separate out management from leadership. They're too often confused.
excellent point.
Leadership isn't about being able to run a meeting, although certainly there's overlap, but leadership isn't about being able to run a meeting. It's about being able to inspire other people. And I really, Chris Hodap made this point in his booklet, Laudable Pursuit. Don't assume that just because the guy's junior warden, he should be senior warden next year. Put the guys in the chairs who are ready, willing, and able to do it. And we say you should prepare for your next chair. Well, if the guy hasn't, or he's taking on too much, and he isn't ready ritually, but he's the right guy for that chair, put him in the chair. If we put too much, I'm certified. I'm a certified lodge instructor. I love ritual. I memorize lectures. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. And past Grand Master Terry L. Seward of Illinois said to me, nobody loves the ritual more than I do, but it's not what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
It's reflective of what we are about. Leadership is not... go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, let me build on what you said, because I really think it's important that when I first started coming through Masonry, it was a well-established tradition of having what we call a progressive line. And for those who are not Masons or just new to Masonry, what that basically means is depends on your jurisdiction, there's at least 5 leadership positions, and during the elections, which we do have democratic elections, the election is really, I wouldn't say in name only, but there has to be a very rare case for it to not go in this order, that you move up to the next chair and the next chair, and the person in the east goes out of the way, and the senior warden moves up, etc. I'm not going to go through all the chairs. But it's kind of been that way, and it's comfortable because people already have some leadership experience. I wouldn't say lazy, but it's a safe bet that they're ready to move up into that next chair. But as Brother Mike said, that's not always the case. And so, one thing that I've tried to do with the Patriot Lodge is we are a brand new lodge, and we don't have that tradition of any sort of progressive line yet. So if we can put the right people in, and not just put them in because they served the time of the chair previous, it's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah. I don't want to. My example's unusual. I became a Mason when I was 49, and 2 weeks after I was raised at my first stated meeting, they elected me junior warden.
Wow.
Now, fortunately for junior warden, at least in Illinois, there's not a lot of ritual to learn. But it was getting thrown in at the deep end. But at the same time, it was about showing that they trusted me to have the responsibility to do that, and so I did.
Right. And that's a good point too. The responsibility of it is people often, I wouldn't say often, it's possible to be comfortable that just you're going to move up and that people are going to look out for you, and any issues you might have, ask someone will cover for me. Man up and be ready for that chair.
Well, yeah, and you said something about the tradition is the progressive line. The 2 most un-Masonic things you can say are, we're going to do it this way because we've always done it that way, and we're not going to do it this way because we've never done it that way. That's not who we should be about.
That is funny. That is really funny.
Oh, I put that in the first PowerPoint I had when I did a leadership presentation about 5 years ago at Grand Lodge, and it was interesting to see how many people in the room were nodding their heads when I said that, because they're tired of it.
Yeah.
Well, there is, in my opinion, there's this perception of tradition within the fraternity. So for someone who comes from the outside, they're expecting there to be some traditions that must be followed. Here in Florida, as opposed to what you were saying, John, about the Patriot Lodge, it is part of the expectation that the line is progressive.
Really?
Yeah. Now,
is that written, or is that an expectation? Because we have all these unwritten rules that.
It has been, where I have seen it written, has been at least from edicts from the Grand Master. So where they are encouraging lodges to do their very best to make sure that the line progresses, as opposed to opening the door to electioneering, because that proved, at least in my district, it proved to be not just detrimental to the harmony of several lodges, but it was insidious. It was the way that it kept on creeping in, more and more to the whole dynamic of some lodges, and it can be.
So you're saying it's there to prevent nepotism?
Yes, and also to avoid. We're not supposed to speak about our ballot. If you have a person in mind for an office, for a chair in the lodge, we're not supposed to be, talking to one another and saying, I voted for him because I think this or the other, And one way to avoid that is to make sure that from the very first chair that you appoint someone, you can envision them progressing all the way to sit in the east and be the leader of the lodge.
Yeah.
But that
Well,
is
I mean,
ideal, but not necessarily as practical as we would like it to be.
yeah, I was going to say that's all well and good, but there has to be a balance that we strike between elections and the fears of nepotism and enabling poor leadership, because
And 5 years of poor leadership, right?
yes,
Oh, yeah.
exactly. And there are situations where a Mason will go into the low chair and he'll do great for a couple of years, and then something will happen, a combination of circumstances, and then that person is just not fit to lead the lodge.
Agree.
And if you're operating in a grand jurisdiction that says, well, okay, we kind of have this unwritten rule with progressive lines, and you put the lodge in a lurch, especially during this person's worshipful master year, when someone else, perhaps one of his other officers, could do a much better job, and the lodge could be saved a lot of heartache and pain. So there's got to be some sort of balance that we can strike.
It's kind of interesting. There was a lodge, Arts and Sciences Lodge, 792 in Ohio. I remember reading about them, and they're called, I guess they self-described as a craft-driven lodge. So, they make decisions yearly, and the whole lodge would sit down and they would decide on what programs and how they wanted to do them. And one of the ways in which they did that, and it's kind of completely opposite of how you usually think of it, where the master comes in and says, my prerogatives for this year are, well, at least that's how I ran it, it's, I came in as king and said, this shall be the way it is, for it is. But anyway, and so the way in which they decide, like, their leadership, is that it's almost like, I don't know if any of you were in band, but the whole competing for a chair type thing. And so they, essentially, during the year, other than the elected offices, which there's only 5 of them, of which only 3 of them are progressive, they actually, if you're a junior warden this year, you might be junior warden next year, while another guy might become senior warden, and it's just, the lodge just sees what kind of leadership do we need for this specific year, and what are we going to do about it? And I thought that was a great, it's a completely opposite idea of how the progressive line, where you're hoping that this guy is building his leadership skills from lowly steward, learning about, washing dishes. I don't know how that teaches leadership, but it does. And then,
Servant leadership.
Yeah,
That's what Disney told me when they hired me the first time.
Like,
And so I don't know.
I want to go back to the idea of leadership being separate from management. And John Maxwell, the leadership guru, talks about the 5 levels of leadership, of which the lowest and the least productive is leadership by position. And if we make the mistake of thinking that because we're going to appoint this guy to this chair, or we're going to elect this guy to this chair, and therefore he will be a leader, I mean, it's simply not true. And going back to appointing a guy, because I can see him being master, sitting in the East in 5, 6, 7 years, however many it is. I'm appointing him, if I'm the master, I'm appointing a guy as junior deacon, because I think it gives him a good opportunity to grow. And this progressive line really is about personal growth within the concept, the confines of the fraternity. And you're not going to find too many guys who you can say, give him some ritual and he could be master now. You're going to appoint a guy and let him learn, and let's see who he is.
So
it's all a tryout.
Anybody who was lucky enough to be at the presentation that Mike does at the Grand Lodge of Illinois, even if you're just not in the area, go see it. He does a great presentation, and the thing he was talking about, these 5 steps of leadership, was really kind of interesting to me, because as I'm watching it, he talks about, like he said, the first level of leadership was this leadership by position. You're assuming people are going to follow you just because you're making the big bucks. Well, in the experience, the way he kind of described it, along with Brother Swaney, who is his counterpart for the meeting, it's almost like if you were a number 5, well, the number 4 was like, really, really good. What was number 4, Michael? I can't remember.
I'm having trouble remembering myself, but hang
Right.
on, I'll get them for you.
Number 4 was like basically you're a leader, because you guys have all seen the poster that it says good leadership is a leader who also works too, right? So the number 4 was somebody who was inspiring and worked with you and all these things. And it's almost like the successful leader starts out at a number 4 and moves to number 1 while maintaining number 4 status.
Right.
So like in Waukegan 78, one of the things that our lodge has always done is made sure that everybody knows if you have ever served as a senior warden, you are eligible to be elected worshipful master. So by that was kind of interesting to me, because then I think about it like, well, that's how I knew it wasn't a progressive line. Well, it's going to be him, then it's going to be him, then it's going to be this guy. It could be anybody. 20 years ago, if you served senior warden, be elected worshipful master next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In my lodge at Iola, when I joined the fraternity, it was almost around the same time where some of this turmoil, was palpable in the whole district, and you had people that were clearly able to lead the lodge. They had both the inspirational aspects of a well developed Mason, as well as the managerial skills of a professional. So they were able to be fiscally responsible. They were able to be very effective in their management of different personalities within the lodge. And we witnessed, even though the expectation and what was always talked about, and I wish I could tell you exactly what the specifics of it are, but you could see how people were ready for this gentleman to become master, and he became master. He was the junior, he was actually the senior deacon, and he was elected master of the lodge.
So,
Now,
Juan, do you remember what happened in Colorado? I think it was like last year. They had the big upset, right? Did you guys follow that?
I didn't.
Go on.
So, essentially, somebody was slated to become the next Grand Master and did not get voted Grand Master. They voted somebody else who was, and it was a huge upset, I guess. And I didn't follow it after that, but I remember brothers like Cliff Porter and Brother Robert Hurd talking about it.
Yeah.
Totally destroyed the idea of a progressive line, even at the highest level of a state Grand Lodge.
Yeah.
So it is possible, right?
Yeah. And the painful thing is, in my opinion, that you have someone who was expecting things, perhaps feels he is able to actually move one more chair and be the leader of the lodge, and he is pushed aside, somebody else is put in. That really affects the whole harmony of the lodge. So it's ideal if you can work from the beginning and try to get them ready, and it's not a surprise to them once they're...
I was talking with a guy who was on the committee for a while and has had to move on to other things, and he's a Grand Lodge instructor and past master of his lodge, and he always talked about having the circle of 12, which is all of the officers, and they just meet and they talk, and it's amazing what good communication can do. I mean, we talk to when we elect a master in my lodge, we talk to them and say, do you want to do this? Is your family ready for you to do this? What do you have ideas? I mean, and don't assume that it's going to happen. Give him the chance to really think about it and let him know he doesn't have to if he doesn't want to. Because,
Right.
I mean, Masonry is a volunteer organization, and if we make demands, people are going to say, I have other demands on my time. I choose to do this.
No, I agree with that, and that brings up another point I wanted to mention too, which is also to your point, difference between a manager and a leader is a leader has to inspire, and often has to make decisions that may or may not be difficult, right? And in order to do that, you're in a volunteer organization. You have to influence people that the decision you make, although it is a benevolent dictatorship, like I said in the past, you still have to explain why these decisions are being made. I've heard stories about masters just ruling with an iron fist and just making just asinine decisions, but more importantly, what we really need to do is, as a good leader, really over-communicate. And so I want to give some credit to Brother Rob Shields, who just got off of a week-long leadership course, and re-emphasize the point that really, when you're making big decisions like that, you cannot over-communicate. You cannot over-explain why you're making these decisions. You're going to make the decision as master regardless, but you need the craft to feel participatory. You need them to understand that you're acting on behalf of the lodge, not on behalf of one person, and really just explain the why. Simon Sinek has a good video of the Golden Circle, which sounds like a Masonic thing anyway, but it's a 3-ring concentric circles.
Start with why.
Start with why. Man, I'm glad you've seen it, because
I did not only see it, I use it as a center for my presentations.
Wow, brilliant! I love it.
And as a matter of fact, Robert, this is a preview for you. Presuming the Grand Master doesn't find out about this broadcast and say, yeah, we don't want him anymore. Our presentation for the Warden's leadership training at Grand Lodge this year is going to be based on Simon Sinek's new book, Leaders Eat Last. And Robert, you were asking about the 5 levels of leadership, yes, according to Maxwell. Position is the first and most basic. People follow you because they have to, based on you're the boss. You can hire and fire. Then there's permission. It's about relationships. People follow you because they want to. And then we have production. People follow you because of what you've done for the organization. And then, this is not quite as. This is about as high as most people ever get. People follow because of what you have done for them. I mean, you've helped them, you've inspired them. Nice. And then there's the pinnacle. I mean, people follow you because they respect you. They don't know what you've done. They just know that you're that kind of a guy. I mean, there are a lot of grandmasters and past grandmasters who live at that level. I think Benny Grisham, illustrious Benny Grisham, has a condo at that level. But you were talking about communication and about explaining your reasons, and I have a story I tell about my son, to whom I have been losing arguments since he was 2. When he was 5, he was jumping up and down on a chair, and I said, Jacob, get down from the chair. And he said, why? I said, because it's dangerous and because I said so. He said, those are 2 reasons. One of them's good, and got down from the chair. And he was right. Because I have no, unless there is a car coming at him, the imperative is not sufficient. I have to explain why I'm doing things. And leadership is no different. I mean, that really is the essence of leadership, is communicating with other people, making them feel valued, and helping them move along. I mean, that old thing, what is it, beating someone about the head and shoulders isn't leadership, it's abuse.
Right. I know. I think to your point about that 5th level of leadership, I really like a quote that Simon Sinek puts in that Golden Circle presentation, which is, well, he's talking about buying a product, but he's basically saying people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So again, translating that to lodge, people aren't going to follow you just because you make orders. They're going to follow you because of what you stand for, what you believe in.
Right, and that's why do we attract members? It's not about because I get a discount on hotels. I can join the Moose if I want to do that, and they have pretty good ribeye sandwiches here. It's because of who these men are and what they represent.
Excellent. All right, Jason, what does Facebook say?
So, As far as social media is concerned for tonight, we've got an interesting question asking us what advice we have from a brother who may have been accelerated to a leadership position and may be facing the East for the first time, who hasn't had those 5 or 6 years, those 5 or 6 foundational years to build himself up into a leader.
I know.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah, so I know that I have a story. I know Nick has a story, and Mike alluded to a story. Nick, why don't you go ahead?
All right. Well, actually, two quick stories. The first one was,
Two.
I had just joined. I know. I promise they'll be faster than yours. So,
Probably.
but when I first joined back in '06, I was going through in the springtime, and then I got into the fall. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, over the summer where what we call dark, most people don't call it dark because that means the charter's dead. But we went dark and came back in September. And then in October, the guy who was going to be taking over the East says, "Hey Nick, just wondering, do you want to be senior steward?" And I was like, "Okay." And then the next year after that, "Hey Nick, do you want to be junior warden?" And I said, "No, you mean junior deacon?" "No, Nick, junior warden." So I was already skipping chairs. And then, and I said, "No, we're going to slow it down. We're going to do that." But then, because I had gotten enough leadership in, I've been in progressive lines now for 8 years. And so, chapter, I had just joined chapter, but I've been in masonry a while. And I get a phone call. It was the first meeting I'd ever missed of chapter. And they said, "Nick," and I'm literally, the phone's ringing, and I'm like, I can't answer it. I've got to move this table. And they're like, I listen to the message, and they say, "Nick, we're going to be putting you in on a position. Don't worry about it. If you have any problems with it, call back in 5 minutes. Otherwise, congratulations." Okay. All of a sudden, I get back, and they're all shaking my hand. "Congratulations, High Priest! Congratulations!"
Oh, man.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I skipping lines. It's one of those that I think it's okay to have a trial by fire. For me, it wasn't such a bad thing for the lodge or the chapter.
And
or
you
the
haven't missed the
council
meeting
commander.
since.
Pretty much, no. You know what? Honestly, I'm just like that car with all the little decals on the back.
I know you're just afraid they're gonna appoint you to something.
God, yeah, you got that right. Holy smokes! But it's not always a bad thing to be accelerated. I don't think, just because you've got the verve, you've got the energy. I don't know.
Yeah,
I thought I didn't have a problem with it.
So the other story I was going to bring up, I'll be quick, which is I did skip a chair as well on my way to the East. And one thing that really helped, although you can never be prepared enough, and I would have liked to have had the luxury of the additional time, but one thing that did help is that our state has a mandatory, what they call Subordinate Lodge Officer Training Course, or SLOT, S-L-O-T. And one thing I like about it is it's kind of a checklist or a cheat sheet. Here's just kind of an outline of the types of things that they cover. A lot of it is administrative, right? It tells you how to develop a calendar, how to develop a budget, and really gets only a module or two into actual leadership. However, when you have nowhere to start, this is a very good blank slate for you to start filling out. So that helped me a lot because I didn't have time to really do a lot of planning, a lot of pontificating about all the administrative kind of things, and this really was an excellent program to just fill in the blanks and help organize my thoughts. So if you're getting accelerated to the East, see if your Grand Lodge has a program like this. They probably do, and it was invaluable for me, which then left time for me to focus more on the good educational programs and a little bit more of the levity instead of worrying about the details.
Yeah, I was.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say I was appointed, or I was elected junior warden immediately after I was raised. Served in that chair for a year. Then I was senior warden for 2 years, and then I was worshipful master for 2 years. And the first year of that was the 150th anniversary of the dedication of our lodge. And so we hosted the Grand Lodge officers and everything. And I kept calling the Grand Master Richard Swaney, most excellent Grandmaster, channeling Bill and Ted. And so the thing I can say is, if you're in the East, you're going to be given multiple chances at every meeting to screw up, and you will.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace it. You'll learn from it. Recognize that you're going to make mistakes. Learn from them, and don't take yourself too seriously. Take the work seriously. Take your brothers seriously, but recognize that in the end, you're a master for a reason, and ask for help.
Yeah, well said. Anything else, Jason?
Well, I was gonna say, even I skipped the junior deacon's chair, so it was interesting. I think something that you can do to help yourself out quite a bit is just as simple as learning all the ritual for the chairs as you go along,
Good point.
including the chairs that you skipped, because there's going to come a point where you're going to need to fill in, and you don't want to be the past master who knows the East and that's it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. And ritual is like eating broccoli. You really don't like it, but you got to do it.
Well, I do.
Oh, you like broccoli. Good for you.
I like broccoli and ritual.
But the good point is once you know it well, then you're not tripping over that. That's not yet another hurdle you have to get over. You can enjoy your time more in the East if you got the ritual down.
So, it frees up so much brain power for you to actually put your undivided attention into the lodge and planning it out.
Right, like so during the ritual of the degrees and things like that, or even a stated meeting, you're not sitting there going, okay, what comes next? What comes next? What comes next? For me right now, I'm senior warden, and sometimes the worshipful master will give the wrong cue at the wrong time, and I'll answer them anyway, and everybody just laughs. I'm like, I just answer the questions correctly. Doesn't matter what is asked.
Right.
But, to go back to the skipping of the chairs and things, I started out, what I understood was the lowest chair in our lodge at the time was the appointed position of junior steward, and then I did senior steward. I did every chair in the lodge, and provided I'm elected worshipful master in the coming year, 6 years of training for this, I still don't feel prepared.
You never will.
No. And so I'm running my first stated meeting next month because worshipful master Bob Lang said, I want you to run a stated meeting and get the feel for it. I said, okay. And so I've been practicing the last 2 weeks running these stated meetings, and still, it wasn't until I sat back and, as Mike said, don't take yourself too seriously, where I sat back and just said, I'm going to make a bunch of mistakes. It doesn't matter. As they always say, right, there's only two people who can make a mistake in the lodge, or who make no mistakes in the lodge, and that's the worshipful master and the candidate. So.
Well, most worshipful Terry L. Seward, past Grand Master of Illinois, so I said in regard to degrees, ritual does not have to be perfect, because it won't be, but it does have to be impressive.
Yep.
And if you are prepared, you'll be fine. I mean, if you just realize you're going to screw up. Every one of us does. I screw up countless times every day in my day-to-day life, in my parenting, and dealing with the dogs, in talking to my wife, in talking with friends, in teaching my class. I screw up all the time.
And don't be afraid to, like you said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I wanted to share this one picture that was posted on our Facebook page.
I have it up.
There we go. Can you see it?
Here it is.
The difference between a boss and a leader.
Mm-hmm.
The boss tells you where to go. A leader says, let's go. Absolutely. So thank you, Bill Mullins, for posting that. Nice. All right, Jason. Wow. You are screen sharing it, too. There you are.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's about all we've got on social media.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's do a quick round of closing. And we'll save you, Brother Mike, for next to last. So that way you can wax poetic about your.
Oh, I thought you wanted to make stuff up.
Well, that too. Let's start with Brother Juan.
Well, I I love the idea of preparing for leadership, and preparing for leadership, I see it as stepping into a leadership position, and it doesn't have to be the highest position. You know, take charge. I'm sure that brothers that listen to us and watch us can identify with the fact that we might have been Masons for some time, and we still feel uncertain if, like Robert said, he's been preparing for 6 years, and he's still a little bit uneasy about that extra step. But that's what part of what makes you a leader. You're not, you're taking steps further, to move, and do it with zeal, and do it with charisma, and you know remember that there's people behind you that are in the position you were some time ago. There's nothing worse than having uh, a leader who is antagonizing his followers. There's no better way to drive a ship aground than to lead in that manner. So, don't forget where you came from, and be a leader. Be decisive, but still be courteous. We're brothers, and we need to respect one another. Um, I think this is a topic that is going to have to be brought up again.
Yeah.
Right, Worshipful Mike, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We have a lot to learn from you, so hopefully you'll answer our emails in the future. And brothers, I invite you to continue to stay in touch with us. If you haven't done so and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you can do us one favor tonight, tell another brother what we are doing here. We want to make sure that more brothers not only just listen to what we're saying, but help us by guiding the conversation in the direction that they need it to go. So please share our page with everybody. The Masonic Roundtable.com, where you can find past episodes. You can find us on YouTube, on iTunes, and all the tunes you can ever think of. You can also find me at thewindingstairs.com. I have been publishing a series called Bridging the Gap, and I invite you to check it out, and also share it with your brothers if you can. Thank you, brothers.
Hey, don't forget to mention your wonderful new addition to your light series. I thought it's a beautiful piece of artwork, so I don't know if you had a copy nearby. Looked like, you had to unplug there for a second.
Here,
it's worth mentioning.
It is.
Look at that.
This is the original. It's parchment, ink, and charcoal and chalk. And it's...
Is that the Light of Wisdom print?
It is, yes.
So, it's beautiful, Juan, so continue doing the great work that you do, and I encourage everyone. It's a great gift for a past master.
Thank you very much, brother.
All right, Brother Nick.
Whoa, that's me. Well, I was thinking about it. I've been in leadership positions for so long in this fraternity that I'm starting to turn into the old dog. It's weird, but it's kind of funny. I always found myself doing better in leadership when I don't know that it's coming. I like to plan a little bit, but it's one of those that I think when it all came down to it, it was everybody that I was with that really helped out to improve the lodge and the chapter, and now with the council and the commandery, is that I tried to make sure that it wasn't just my decisions, that everybody had a voice. And I think that actually was really effective. I mean, sure, I had certain prerogatives that I wanted to get done, websites. We started a waffle breakfast and all this other stuff. I had those in mind, but really the biggest thing I wanted to do was just kind of turn over the lodge to the other guys and say, what do you want to see? And I think, I know that doesn't really sound like leadership, and maybe it isn't, but I really do think that if you want people, especially in a volunteer organization, to work in it, you have to work with them, because there are all kinds of things they can do. Scouts, church, school, whatever it is, and we're just one more night for them to be gone, and we have to give them a reason. And so leaders have to actually think about that. Is it's not so much the work, it's the people doing the work, and you have to think about them. And I think that graphic really explained it. Is that you have to be with them, you have to work with them.
I agree.
Let's see. My blog is millennialfreemason.com, and as I said, I was waxing again about this nostalgia of when I started blogging many many years ago, and so I posted just recently an old article that I had, and I don't know, it's been a long journey and I've loved it, but yeah, I'm thinking of other articles that I'm going to be writing on the blog, and it should be interesting. But luckily, I'm not like the 50-year member yet. So, but I feel like it sometimes. So, thank you again, and guys, yeah, just like us, love us, tell us what we need to change. We have been listening to your comments, and hopefully we've been meeting your expectations. And thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brother Jason.
Thanks, John. When it all comes down to it, when you think about leadership in a volunteer organization, you have to inspire people. It's been a big theme for this episode, because if not, people are going to say, well, then why am I doing this? I'm going to go somewhere else. And I've been taking a lot of lessons from my wife, who used to be a volunteer manager at a nonprofit. So think about ways that you can get people involved and get people excited about being involved without the normal carrot and stick types of treatments, given that you can't give them money and you can't specifically obligate them materialistically, at least, to help. It has to be a mutual affection for the brotherhood and a mutual love for Masonry and what we do as an organization. Really want to give a shout out to Frank Scrobot, who has been listening and watching for several months now. He's getting his EA degree tonight. So I've been calling him brother for a couple months now, and I'm really excited that it's actually official, or should be, as of the time of this broadcast. And other than that, I've got a Masonic blog, The 2-Foot Ruler, Masonry in Plain Language. Go ahead and check it out. Also check out our website, www.themasonicroundtable.com. We post show notes every week, so go and check out some of the things that we look at in preparation for each week's episode. With that, I will pass it off to Brother Robert.
All right.
Hey guys, Brother Robert Johnson. Thinking about some of the things that we did tonight, we decided to talk about the essentials of lodge leadership. I know so many guys that are great leaders, and as Mike and John, we all really talked about tonight, was the difference between the manager and the leader who is the inspiring guy. If you're scared to take that leadership role, if somebody wants you for that role, and you're not a manager. I'm not a manager. Never been a manager. I've held those positions, but I've never been the guy who was about, and this is bad for future employment, but I'm never about the company. I'm about the people. And if you care about people, leadership can come naturally. And I think if you guys kind of think about that, among all the many other topics and ideas everybody kind of talked about tonight, you'll feel a little bit, maybe not more prepared for a leadership role, but more at ease about it. And to kind of remember something that a lot of guys don't know or don't remember, maybe it's not in your jurisdiction, but there's a phrase in the Illinois ritual for elections of officers, and Right Worshipful Brother Michael will correct me if I'm wrong. If to remember that although you were elected Worshipful Master of your lodge, it is by them that you were elected. So you do remember that you are working with them, and you are only elevated by them for a short period of time. And in that time, be responsible and work with them and be a positive influence and work hard. So my blog / it's not really a blog, it's the podcast, which is wcypodcast.com. It's another. I had one blog post all year long. wcypodcast.com, and it's a podcast, and it's Masonic, and check it out if you want to.
And it's awesome.
Debatable.
Look at that. All right, Brother Mike, what would you summarize as a good key aspect of leadership?
Oh, well, first of all, I want to point out that Robert is also the editor of the Midnight Freemasons blog, to which I am a contributor, and to which, by the way, Brother Jason contributed a really superb piece a few weeks ago. It was one of the very few pieces of writing on the internet that I've not felt the urge to edit. I've been teaching writing for 30 years, so what can I tell you?
I'm a fellow grammar Nazi.
That is my nickname among my students. Robert was talking about the ritual about the election of officers, the installation of officers really is what it is, and it's public, so I'm not betraying anything. Another part of the installation of the worshipful master is it is not by the strong arm or the iron will that obedience and order, the chief requisites of good government, are secured, but by holding the key to the hearts of men. It's about relationships. It really is. I mean, you look at the difference between a manager and a leader. A leader inspires people to want to go on the trip, and the manager makes sure the bus has a driver and that there's gas in the bus. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those can overlap in the same person, but Robert, if he's not a manager, he'll find a manager and inspire him to make sure that things get done. I just want to say thank you guys for having me here. I also want to give a brief plug to my ebook, which is available as a Kindle download. It's entitled, let me think for a moment, I wrote it last year, Daily Influences, Meditations for Servant Leaders. I know Robert has a copy. And
I do. It's a fantastic book, and we talked about it on the Whence Came You podcast last year when it came out. It's not expensive, and I'm
$2.99.
putting up the screenshot right now, so check this out. Right. Screen share. Start screen share. There you go. Here's the book. $2.99. 5-star reviews. It's only 2 reviews, but don't let that sway you. It is a good book. The format is great. He lists a quote, and then he explains the quote, and it really drives it home.
And then an action step for the day.
Yep, yes. Great. That's awesome.
And no grammatical errors?
Oh,
None.
typos, yes.
But no intentional grammatical errors. Thank you.
If you find any, let me know, because I want to put it out in print.
All right. Thank you very much, Brother Mike. In closing, you kind of stole my thunder. I mentioned it back in the mentoring episode, but I'll mention it again. I'm a huge fan of servant leadership, so I'll definitely be buying your book because that's really what it's all about. It's about enabling vice directing. And your job as a leader is to make it so that the people working for you are successful. And you can do that by making sure that you get all the impediments out of their way. So I'm definitely a fan of that. So thank you very much for explicitly calling out servant leadership. The last thing I'll mention is I just want all the viewers and brothers that are joining us to just keep my family in your thoughts, because this week we are going to have our 3rd child born this week. So on Thursday we'll be having our 3rd girl, and it'll be new excitement back in the household of lots of lack of sleep and just
you don't need it anyway.
General chaos.
That's another Job's Daughters meeting you get to look forward to in the future.
At least the 3rd one, right? So I think I'll do my best to join you guys in the following weeks. I kind of got the pass from the wife that can possibly still happen. It's only an hour a week or so, but hopefully Jason will lead us in a great direction.
Right into the ground in a blaze of glory. I am up to the challenge.
Let's take to Valhalla.
All right, guys. Well, Thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.